When mining companies are doing their due diligence on responsible sourcing, they often look just at the mine, and that's a bit of a mistake because sourcing is, if you look at the word, it's a source, it's a line, it's a pathway. The mine is the first protocol. It's the beginning of the journey that materials make on their way into our cars and our gadgets. If you really want to understand sourcing, you need to understand the entire journey that metal is going to make. First, as it comes out of the ground, second, as it gets processed, and then often as it goes through two, three, four, 5 or 10 sometimes different levels of processing on a route around the world. And that is what sourcing is about. It's about figuring out what the most efficient and sustainable route to market is for your product. And I think you need to think about it in that context. And so when you're thinking about due diligence on a mine, because you want to make sure you're getting responsibly sourced materials, sourcing materials, for example, in Africa, which is where a lot of the new materials that are going to power the energy transition are going to come from, and then shipping it all the way to China for processing in a largely unrefined state, for example. That means you have to transport 2, 3, 4 times as much material, and then having it processed, ping-ponging around China and turned into parts, and then shipped back to another facility in Europe or North America might not actually be the most logical and sustainable sourcing route. So when you are looking at the mining industry and you're doing that due diligence, remember you're looking at the very beginning. And you need to think about mining as in terms of where it is on that path to getting into your car. And make sure that entire pathway is a sustainable pathway. While the world is looking for a more sustainable source of raw materials, what they really, we've determined, should be looking for is a more sustainable route to market. And one of the very interesting things actually about Saudi Arabia, for example, and the role that they're looking to play in sourcing and being part of, and minerals being part of the energy transition, is how special where they are located geographically is. They're, right next to Africa, on the way to Asia. They're kind of in the middle. It's called the Middle East for a reason. And I think finding that efficient, when you're looking at sustainable sourcing and saying, I would like lithium in my car battery, and my lithium mine is in Australia, what is the most sustainable route? And try to think about short, efficient, who's got the cheapest energy, who's got the shortest route, who's got the best standards that you can transparently source the entire route from. That's a very important part of what you're looking at. So really, you're thinking about sourcing in terms of context, and in terms of standards, and being able to see a complete picture and understand that mining is just the beginning of that journey. Investors are looking for a lot of different things when it comes to a company's ESG credentials. And I think that ESG credentials is a bit of a misnomer because there's about 50 different standards out there and no one of them is perfect. Every investor has where their money's coming from and why they're investing. So for us, as a fund, our investors have come to us and invested in us because they believe we're going to do a higher level of ESG due diligence. And we do, and that's important to our investors. The people who are investing in you will have their own reasons for investing. What is an ESG credential? And unfortunately, that is something that is different for every single mining operation. ESG is almost a misnomer. Environmental, social, and governance are all 3 very separate issues. And what a good environmental license to operate in is in a desert context is obviously very different than what it would be in a jungle context. So you really need to consider that, is your environmental standards and your environmental plan appropriate for the environment you're operating in? And the same thing for social. Is my social engagement plan, is my social license to operate appropriate for the environment that or the community and country that I'm operating in? Are my governance standards appropriate to the exchange where I'm listed and to what my stakeholders are? Because that's what governance is about. It's about managing for your stakeholders. And so ESG is a very customized solution for every single investment. And what investors want to know is that you have the right ESG solution for your operation. And that takes a bit of an educated investor, but also in terms of being the company, you need to understand that you need to come up with your own customized plan and make sure it addresses the needs of all of your stakeholders. What I would say is the world is going through a bit of a paradigm shift. Sustainability is affecting every business in the world, whether you're manufacturing paper clips or you've got a coffee shop. Are you sustainable is something everyone's asking. And in mining, just like in your coffee shop, sustainability is a different thing no matter what you are. And I don't believe that there's any one standard for it. I would actually prefer to refer to ESG principles or sustainability principles. There are principles that apply to sustainability no matter where you're operating or what you're operating in. The EU has actually recently published an EU sustainable raw materials set of principles that is very, very good. And then you need to apply those principles to whatever your specific context is. But in terms of, and there are standards out there, but the good standards allow for that difference and those different standards to occur. So having a safe tailings dam is only relevant if you have a tailings dam, which not all mines do. Having a proper social license to operate that respects the rights of Indigenous peoples is only relevant if you have Indigenous peoples in the region, and not every mine does. So saying that you must respect, as a principle, shall we say, the rights and context of the community you're operating in, that's a good principle. What that means for every different operation is going to be a very, very different thing. And I think that that's something that has to change if we're going to ever truly be a sustainable industry. A respect for the fact that sustainability on a high level is non-negotiable, but on a specific level is very customized. We are in a race to net zero, and every single industry in the world is being asked to participate in that race. And one of the most difficult things for the mining industry is we're being told/asked to produce more metals than we have ever produced in the history of mankind to feed this race, to feed the battery and the renewable power installations and all of that sort of thing. But we're also being asked to do it on a lower carbon basis. And that is a huge challenge for the industry to meet the pace, but also to meet that pace in a sustainable way and in a low carbon way ourselves. Because what's the point in, building more renewable power if the materials going into it aren't sustainable and low carbon to begin with? And it is a massive challenge that everyone in the industry is trying to figure out. I think it's about having a plan and being realistic about what you can do. There's a reason why the goal is net zero by 2050. And I have a huge amount of respect for the fact that within the region, one of the largest oil producers in the world has committed to net zero and was one of the first people to commit to net zero, and that they apply that net zero methodology to all of their investments and everything they do, and they deserve a huge amount of credit for that. But I would also caution everyone to remember that a race means we need to go quickly, but going quickly sometimes means you forget the details. And we are about a sustainable path to development and about slowly, efficiently, and sustainably lowering our carbon footprints in everything we do. And remember that it is a journey. It's more of a journey than a race, I think. And we need to consider all aspects of the low carbon transition and the energy transition as we're getting there. I think every mine should have a net zero path. Whether they can achieve net zero in a year, 2 years, 5 years, or 10 or 15 years is going to be different for everyone. But they need to be committed to it. They need to show that they're thinking about it in all aspects of their operations, and they need to know how they're going to get there. But I think we need to be a little bit patient with them as they figure it out, because as we've mentioned many times, there is no one way to get there. For me personally, one of the things that I love about what I have the privilege of doing is I get to work in one of the few industries in the world that has the ability to contribute to all 17 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And mining is unique in that it literally can contribute, if done well, to every single one of those 17 goals. The question is, how do local communities, how do local governments, how do we all figure out how we can contribute to that? And I think that the way we do that is by acknowledging the goals, by saying we would like to create not just employment, but sustainable employment. We would like to be a partner in the communities in which we operate, but coming at it from the point of a partner, not from the point of, we're a big company and we're going to employ a lot of people and that's good enough. No, it's about engaging with every community and every government where we work as an industry and saying, okay, this is what we need and this is what we think we can contribute. What do you need and what can you contribute? And I think we need to start having a much more honest conversation with these countries and these communities about what mining can and can't do and how to build the kinds of industries that are sustainable and lasting and that are balanced in their contribution. So one of the most important sustainable development goals is about creating sustainable economic development from the community level up. And mining is unique in that it creates, for every one job on a mine site, it tends to create a minimum of 7 and up to 14 different jobs in the wider community and country in which it operates, which as a multiplier effect is bigger than any other industry. And so primary jobs on a mine site really do become a catalyst for change. And that's one of the things that mining can do very, very well and that governments should be really interested in, because it's not just, the 100 to 1,000 jobs on the mine site. It's, the 1,000 to 15,000 jobs in the wider country. It's about the foreign direct investment that comes from it. It's about the infrastructure that gets put in to service the mine that the entire community gets to share in. Those are all some of the things that mining can do that very few other industries are capable of doing. And it's something that should really encourage communities to believe that if they engage well with the company, and they need to engage, as does the mining company with the local community and the local government, but if they do make that engagement, the benefits are there for all. Combating climate change is one of the biggest issues that everyone is worrying about right now, and trying to figure out how we can effectively reach those goals and keep planetary temperature down to a level that we can all live with. There is no industry that is actually more essential to that than the mining industry. Every single form of renewable power in the world, whether it's nuclear, wind, solar, hydro, all of the basic materials that go into creating that, the permanent magnets on a wind turbine are filled with rare earths. All of the energy that comes out of these renewable power formations is made out of copper and hopefully one day graphene. The essential role that the mining industry has to play, the unsubstitutable role that mining has to play in the energy transition, I think is something that very few people understand, but I think needs to be understood, because if we don't understand the role it plays, then we're not going to be able to properly and sustainably harvest the power of mining to contribute to the energy transition.